The premier lounge on Concourse D of Aldrin Farley International Airport was not a loud place. That was the point of it. Soft carpet the color of aged oak, low recessed lighting, the kind of engineered quiet that came from thick glass and better insulation than the rest of the terminal. Mira Osi had been working the floor there for 11 days. She was still learning the rhythms of it. Which passengers liked their coffee without being asked, which ones wanted to be left entirely alone, which rows filled up first on Monday mornings. 11 days was not very long, and she knew it. So when the situation at the card reader started, she did what she had been doing all week. She watched, and she said nothing. And she assumed the person who had been doing this job for years must know what he was doing. The woman arrived at the lounge entrance at 9:30. She was not what Mira would have noticed on the street. There was nothing flashy about her, nothing announcing itself. A dark wool coat, a single carry-on bag, well-traveled. She moved through the terminal the way people move when they have done something 10,000 times, which is to say, without thinking about it. She pressed her access card to the reader at the entrance, and the reader beeped once, and that was where it started. The lounge supervisor, whose name was Darian Friel, appeared from behind the reception desk before the second beep had faded. Friel had been managing the Premier Lounge for 4 years. He carried those 4 years visibly, in the particular way he held his jacket lapels when he crossed the floor, in the way his expression arranged itself, when he had already decided something before he got there. He had already decided something now. "I'm sorry," he said, though his tone was not sorry at all. "This card is flagging as invalid for this class of service." The woman looked at him once, without alarm. "I travel on this route every 3 weeks," she said. "It has always worked. Systems showing a flag. It can happen with cards that are reassigned, or that haven't been updated for a change in status." He let that last phrase sit there with a particular weight, as though it were doing a job on his behalf. "You'll want to collect your bag and check in at the main terminal desk. They can sort out your eligibility." Mira was refilling the coffee station on the near wall and watched the woman's face during this speech. It did not do what faces usually did when Friel deployed that tone, which was to crumple slightly, or to flush, or to begin apologizing. The woman simply looked at him for a moment, the way a person looks at something they have fully understood. And then she said, "I would like to speak with your direct supervisor, please." Friel smiled the way people smile when they believe the conversation is already over. "The duty manager is unavailable. The main terminal desk is a 3-minute walk. They'll be able to help you." He gestured toward the corridor behind her. The woman held his gaze for one more beat, just one, and then she reached for her carry-on, turned without further word, and walked to the row of seats along the lounge's far interior wall, which were technically still in the lounge, still on the right side of the card reader, because she had not yet left. Friel noticed this. "Ma'am, the main terminal is through the—" "I heard you," she said pleasantly. "I'll be a moment." She sat down. She set her bag beside her knee. She took her phone from her coat pocket, found a number without appearing to scroll for it at all, and dialed. Friel watched her for 3 seconds, clearly calculating whether to press the point, and then the lounge filled up behind him. A group of connecting passengers from a delayed inbound, and he turned his attention to the desk. The woman on the phone did not raise her voice once. Mira, collecting cups from the table nearest the window, heard maybe 4 sentences. She did not hear distress in any of them. What she heard was something more like a person reporting a fact. The date, the location, the nature of the situation, then a pause, then 2 words Mira couldn't catch, then the call ended. The woman placed the phone back in her coat pocket, folded her hands, and waited. Mira went back to the coffee station and tried to remember what she was supposed to be doing. 12 minutes passed. The delayed passengers settled. Friel circled the floor once, glanced at the woman in the far seats, and moved on. The lounge resumed its engineered quiet. Mira found herself returning to the coffee station, even when it didn't need attention, because it gave her a sightline to the far seats without being obvious about it. The woman had not moved. She was not on her phone. She was not reading. She sat with the particular quality of stillness that Mira could not quite name. It was not nervousness held down, which was what most people's stillness looked like in airports. It was something else. It was the stillness of a person who already knows what the next hour holds and has decided the waiting is simply part of it. At 9 minutes before 10, the gate agent appeared. Her name was Sandra Chu. Mira knew her from the Tuesday briefings, and she was a 15-year employee of Harwell Continental Airlines who had walked through this lounge lobby dozens of times without breaking stride. She broke stride now. She was through the glass doors and 3 steps into the lounge when she saw the woman in the far seats, and she stopped. Not the slow stop of recognition. The immediate stop of a person who has just processed something that rearranges the entire picture they were standing inside of. Sandra's eyes moved quickly to Friel at the desk and then back to the far seats. And then she stepped back out through the glass doors and to the left toward the staff room corridor. Mira watched this and understood that she was missing something. She looked at the clock above the desk, 9:53, and she thought about the appointment bulletin that had been pinned to the staff room corkboard since her shift started at 7 that morning. She had looked at it twice because she'd been told to familiarize herself with it. She had not thought about it since. She excused herself from the floor and walked to the staff room. The bulletin was still there. Half a sheet of paper, printed on Harwell Continental letterhead, the kind of internal communication that went up when the organization needed its people to know something without a ceremony about it. A photograph, a headshot, professional, unremarkable, a name, a title in bold, regional president, Northeast Operations and Client Relations, Harwell Continental Airlines Group, effective this date. And below the name, a single sentence that the staff room had apparently treated as background noise all morning. Please extend all operational courtesies. Mira stood in front of that bulletin for perhaps 4 seconds. Then she walked back out to the lounge floor and kept her face very still and began collecting cups that did not need collecting. There was nothing to do with what she now knew except wait, which was what the woman in the far seats was also doing, with considerably more composure than Mira was currently managing. At 10:11, 41 minutes after the phone call ended, the lounge's main entrance opened and the director of ground operations walked in. His name, Mira would later learn, was Carl Eberle. He was not a man who came to lounges on ordinary mornings, which the 2 HR personnel walking behind him made immediately clear. One of them was carrying a manila folder. Friel looked up from the desk. Eberle did not look at Friel first. He looked at the far seats. He crossed the lounge floor, the whole lounge watching now, because there was no way to cross a room that way without being watched, and stopped in front of the woman sitting there. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, and his voice carried just enough for the nearest tables to hear it. "Vivian Caldwell, I apologize for this morning, and I apologize personally for the time you have been waiting." The woman, Vivian Caldwell, regional president, effective that date, looked up at him and nodded once, briefly, the way a person nods when an apology is accepted, and they would prefer to move forward. She did not perform the moment. She did not make it larger than it was. She simply stood, settled the strap of her carry-on bag over one shoulder, and let Carl Eberle gesture toward the corridor. Then Eberle turned to the desk. Friel was already still, the complete stillness of a man who has understood something a full 20 seconds before anyone around him has begun to suspect what it is. One of the HR personnel opened the manila folder. The written notice was 2 pages. It outlined the terms of an immediate administrative suspension pending a formal HR investigation, effective from the moment of receipt, which was 10:11 on a Tuesday morning in the Premier Lounge on Concourse D. Eberle did not hand it to Friel himself. The HR person did, professionally and without drama, because that was how it was done. Mira watched Friel take the pages. She watched his hands. She had spent 11 days on this floor, learning to watch what passengers' hands did when they were holding something unexpected, and she watched Friel's hands now. They held the pages carefully. The way hands hold things they are not sure are real. Eberle said one sentence to him, low and even. "Someone from HR will contact you by end of day." Then he turned and walked with Vivian Caldwell out of the lounge and down the Concourse D corridor toward the gate. The lounge went quiet again, not the engineered quiet of good insulation and low lighting. A different kind. The kind that comes after a room has witnessed something it will be, sorting out for a while. Mira stood at the coffee station. She was still holding a cup she had picked up several minutes ago and had not yet put down. She set it back on the tray. She thought about the first moment she had seen Vivian Caldwell at the card reader. She had assumed, because Friel had seemed so certain, because he had the 4 years and the lapels and the particular tone, she had assumed he must be right, that the card must genuinely be flagged, that the system had correctly identified something that didn't match. It had not occurred to her to wonder what the system might have missed, or what Friel might have missed, or what a person looked like when they were simply calm rather than simply wrong. She understood now that those were not the same thing. A passenger at a window table signaled for coffee. Mira poured it. She moved down the row, checking levels, doing the ordinary work of the floor, the same 11-day work she had been doing all morning. But something had shifted in the way she was doing it. Something small, in the way she looked at the people who walked through the lounge entrance from now on. Not the card in their hand. The face. The quality of their stillness. What she was looking for, she realized, was something she couldn't have named a day ago but could name now. She was looking for composure that was not just the absence of noise, the kind that holds still because it knows the 41 minutes are finite, and the truth is already in the room, and the truth does not need her help to land. Out on Concourse D, a Harwell Continental flight to the northeast was beginning its boarding sequence. Somewhere past the gate, Vivian Caldwell was finding her seat. In the staff room on the other side of the lounge wall, the appointment bulletin with her photograph was still pinned to the corkboard, in the same position it had been in since 7 that morning. The lounge filled up again. The engineered quiet returned. Mira worked the floor. She thought about Friel for a moment, one honest moment, and she thought that the tragedy of it, if you could call it that, was not that he had been cruel for its own sake. She had not seen cruelty, exactly. What she had seen was a man so certain of the picture in front of him that no detail in the actual room could interrupt it. The coat without a logo on it, the bag without a status tag, a card reader that beeped once, in a way that confirmed everything he already thought he knew. He had been so certain of the story that he had walked past her photograph on a corkboard 2 hours before she arrived and had not thought to connect them. Certainty like that had a price. She had seen the price, 2 pages in a manila folder, delivered at 10:11 on a Tuesday morning. She did not think about him again. She thought about Vivian Caldwell, sitting in those far seats for 41 minutes, hands folded, waiting for the thing that was already in motion to arrive. Not with anger, not with the tightly wound patience of someone suppressing it, with the actual patience of a person who knows that composed and correct is a position that holds, and that the 41 minutes are simply the distance between the call and the answer. The last passengers of the morning wave settled in and ordered their coffees. The gate board above the lounge entrance ticked over. Boarding complete. The flight to the northeast pushed back from its stand at 23 minutes past 10, on time. Mira worked the floor. She would do this job for 12 more years, and in all of that time, she would never once flag a card without first looking at the face of the person, holding it, not for threat, not for suspicion, but for the thing she had learned to look for now, the quality of a person who already knows who they are, regardless of whether the room has caught up yet. She considered that a fair and useful thing to know.